Hello, my little rain clouds. I thought I might try something a little bit different today, and I just share with you something I did in my day. Kind of a vlog type thing, maybe. A little story time, slice of life. I don't know. But it was a new experience for me, stepping a bit outside of my comfort zone, and I thought it might be nice to share with you. So, something about me. I quite enjoy playing board games and card games and things like that, but I typically don't play them physically in the same room with someone. Number one, a lot of the people in my life don't live close to me. Many of them are in different countries and on different continents, so that can be tough. Also, it tends to be quite expensive if you buy a lot of board games and card games, which is understandable, as they involve a lot of, high quality components and things like that. But I tend to play board games and card games online with the use of a program called Tabletop Simulator, which is a wonderful little thing. But there's a particular card game that I've been enjoying, and it had its launch day event today. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to go to my local game store, and I'm going to participate and try it out. It's a game called Keyforge, made by Fantasy Flight Games. Fantasy Flight Games make lots of really, really great board games and card games. They tend to be well made, well designed, and have very high production values. But they tend to be a little bit pricey because of that. And when I say a little bit, I mean quite pricey. This is not at all endorsed by Fantasy Flight Games. This isn't some paid promotion, though it could be. FFG, hit me up. But it's a new game called Keyforge, and one of the draws of Keyforge is that it is very accessible. You don't need to buy an awful lot of stuff. You don't need to know what you're doing and build your own deck of cards out of all sorts of cards that you collect from random booster packs that you spend hundreds of dollars on or anything like that. You just go and you buy a deck of cards, pre-made. They are randomly generated by a computer algorithm, and your deck is unique. Many decks may be similar to your deck, but there's a bajillion, gazillion made-up number amount of decks that could be made. And they all have their own little unique identity card and their uniquely generated name. Often the name is kind of ridiculous, but they're all randomly generated. And yeah, you can just show up and buy a deck. It's pre-made. You can't change it. You just kind of get stuck with what you're given. But that's simple. It means that you don't need to think about things and build it yourself, and you don't need to worry about getting new cards. You just buy a thing, and that's it, and you don't have to buy anything else. It retails for about $10 US, which was about $16 here. But I thought, you know what, that's pretty cheap. Ultimately, for a thing I can play with and enjoy, and even if it was just for that day, and I never play it again, it's not bad. I'd pay more than that going to the movies probably. So yeah, overall, not too bad. And yeah, I decided I wanted to go to my local game shop and support them and support a company who makes stuff that I like and support a game that I thought was cool. And I've been to that game shop before a couple of times, just browsing. I didn't really know how to join in. I didn't really feel comfortable or confident in being able to join in with these people. It seemed very insular, I guess. And so I thought maybe this time it'll be a bit different, because it's a launch day event. They want to welcome people. People are mostly on the same page, not really knowing exactly what they're doing, playing things, probably for the first time, although some people had played online or, pre-release decks or something like that. But I had a decent idea of how to play. And I thought, you know what, it'll be somewhat more accessible, because it's the first, launch event thing for this brand new card game. And so I decided to go on a whim. Even though I wasn't particularly confident, I thought, I'm going to go outside my comfort zone and I'm going to try this. And I'm glad that I did. I didn't have an amazing experience, but I had a pretty decent experience. And that's good enough. I waited around because it was sprinkling. There was just like light rain. And I was going to walk there, so I was hesitant to go while it was just lightly raining. So I thought I'll wait and see if the weather improves, and it didn't. So eventually I just said, all right, I'm just going to go. And as soon as I get out and I start walking, of course, it starts raining a lot more heavily, which was not ideal. But I decided to keep going through it. So I trudged along with my umbrella, and I went to the game shop, and I got there and I bought a deck of cards, and there were some people there playing. Wasn't too busy, but there was, a decent number of people there. There was maybe like 8 people playing. And so I decided that I would just, after looking through my deck and seeing what I got, I would just talk to one of the people and just see if they wanted to play. And, I'm not that bad with social anxiety and shyness and stuff, but it's not a strong suit of mine either. Certainly there are a lot of people who struggle with it more than I do, but it can be tough initiating things and taking the lead. But I did it. And I played with a guy who was very quiet and a bit mumbly, but he was fine. And we played 2 games. I won the first one, where he conceded because he knew that it was going to end up with me winning. So he forfeited that one, and we played again, and he won that one. And then I played with someone else, and it was a very close match, but I won that one too. So 2 out of 3 ain't bad, and that felt nice. Unfortunately, I didn't get to play with anyone else. The games went on a bit long, I think, and there was a bit of like awkward matchmaking, I guess, because people had started games at different times. But it was nice just playing with some strangers and seeing how all the different decks worked, because everybody had their own unique deck that had a different combination of factions and cards and specialties and things like that. And it was interesting. And it was a different kind of culture than I'm used to. There's a certain kind of culture and camaraderie about board games and card games and the atmosphere in a game shop. And it's not for everyone. And I don't know that I'll go there every week or anything. But it was interesting to experience that. It was good to broaden my horizons and explore something I was interested in. Meet some new people, see what it's like, and I think that alone was worth it. But I also got a cool deck of cards that I could potentially play with other people, and I could potentially introduce my friends to this game, and I can introduce you to it too. If you'd like to try it out, you certainly can. The launch date is the 15th of November, which it could still be where you are. So if you want to pop over to your local game shop, you could check it out. But you don't have to. Maybe you'll just enjoy listening to my little tale. Yeah. it was a fun experience. It was different. There were ups and downs and obstacles, things that made it a bit more difficult or less motivating to go through the rain, and a feeling of uncertainty, not really knowing what was in store for me. But I did it anyway. I got out of my comfort zone, and it went fine. There were bad things, but I handled them. There were good things, and I enjoyed them. It was a mixed bag, and I can handle that. That's good to know. It's good to remind myself that it's okay for there to be some unenjoyable parts or less enjoyable parts. It's okay for it not to live up to your wildest dreams or your hopes or your expectations. It's okay for it to just be enjoyable enough, for it to be kind of nice. And as for my deck, you get assigned 3 random houses. There are, I think, 6 houses in total, and you don't know what you're going to get before you open the pack. So it's kind of like a lucky dip. It's just, you get 3 different houses, and they all do different things and have different specialties and different play styles. And you get different cards within those houses. So even if the same person has the 3 same houses as you, they might have very different cards than you do. And their deck might play very differently than yours does. And it's kind of cool. It's not the exact deck that I would have liked, but that's kind of the point. The appeal of the game, at least partly, is not knowing what you're going to get and then making the best of it. There's a format for Magic the Gathering, a popular card game, which was actually made by the guy who made this. And in that game, you open a bunch of random packs of cards, and then you put together the best deck you can with this random assortment of cards. And so this is kind of a purer form of that, where you're just given some cards, and it's not necessarily the kind of deck that you would have wanted to play or the combinations that you would have picked. It's not necessarily all of the best cards. It's just your deck. Quirky and random and flawed and a mixed bag. And you make the best of it. And that's not going to appeal to some people, but it's kind of nice just letting go of the idea of finding or building the perfect deck and accepting that you don't have a choice as to what cards are in your deck. All you have is the choice of how to play with them, how to use them best, or how to use them in the way that you want to. That's kind of a metaphor for life, which appeals to me. You don't get to choose what cards are in your deck. You're dealt a random hand from a random deck of cards. You don't get to say where you're born, or what you look like, or what your family is like. You're thrust into a world, and you don't have a whole lot of control about what you're given. You just have to make the best of what you have. Make do with the deck that you're given. And it's going to be different from everybody else's. Not necessarily better or worse, just different. And it's yours. You can fight against that and maybe not have such a great time. Or you can embrace it and try and enjoy what you have. Make the best of it. Adapt and embrace it. So it's kind of a life lesson as well as a deck of cards. But yeah, it's an interesting philosophical approach, and I kind of like that. It's quirky and weird. It's not necessarily my favorite game or the game that would suit me best. It's not necessarily the game that I'll be playing for years and years afterwards, but it's an interesting take on something, and it's very different, and I like that. Anyway, let me tell you about my deck for a little bit. It has 3 different factions in it. It has shadows, who are rogues and pirates and thieves. They steal your enemy's resources. They can do some tricky, sneaky things. They can dodge and avoid attacks. They can flip things around on your opponent. They're kind of cool. They're a bit situational. They can be really good or really not that great, depending on how the game's going. But it's interesting. It's a challenge. Not my favorite faction, but not too bad. There's Brobnar. They're like a clan of fire giant barbarians, I guess. Berserk warriors. They're very fighty, very aggressive. They don't really have a whole lot of strategy, which is kind of counter to the Shadows faction. So one part is very like brute force, and the other kind is very nuanced and tricksy. And then the third faction is Sanctum. They're like paladins, I guess. They're like holy space mech paladin cops of the future. The whole game is very like science fantasy. There's all these different factions, and they're very, very thematically different, and they're all kind of mushed together on this different planet. And everybody's fighting to forge keys that will unlock vaults that have like cool treasures and stuff, I guess. I don't know. The lore's kind of weird, but the aim of the game is to collect amber, which is a resource, and then forge 3 keys with it. And whichever player forges the 3rd key first wins. So it's kind of a race to do that. But you can fight and disrupt your enemy's plans, or you can steal their amber, or you can get your own. You can do all sorts of weird approaches. There's a whole bunch of different factions that act in different ways. And I'm not the biggest fan of Brobnar or Shadows. I quite like Sanctum. Sanctum has a lot of protection, a lot of healing. They can capture your opponent's amber, so like hold it hostage. And yeah, they tend to have a lot of armor on them, so they're tough to take down. And I think they're quite cool aesthetically as well. A lot of glowing, golden lights and knights in shining armor and stuff, but in a more sort of space science sci-fi kind of way. But yeah, they're pretty cool. There's Mars, which are like the stereotypical little green men. I don't really like them either. They're not in my deck, but I fought against a guy who had Mars in his deck. And there's Logos, which are like the science faction. There's a lot of like cybernetic implants and robots and time traveling and wormholes and stuff. They're pretty cool. I quite like them. And there's also Dis, who are like demonic, otherworldly creatures. They're very risk versus reward, I guess. They can do some pretty nasty things, but they tend to have penalties associated with them too. Some like extra costs that you don't really want to pay. But they're pretty shady, pretty nefarious. They're pretty cool. I quite like them too. And there's Untamed, who are like the nature wildlings, druids and animals and crazy alien creatures from this like forest kind of area, I guess. They're pretty cool too. I like them. So I like Sanctum. I like Dis. I like Untamed. Those would probably be Oh, actually, Logos as well. They're pretty great too. Yeah, there's a lot of good guys in there. So, I'm not the biggest fan of the factions that I have for my deck, but that's kind of the idea, is that you get given this thing and it's not ideal, but you make it work. It's not the playstyle that I would have necessarily chosen, but I got given it, and it's kind of a fun challenge of adapting to that and playing to its strengths, even if that's not your natural tendency. So it's kind of cool. I don't know what I'm next going to play with the deck that I have, but it's kind of nice just having it as a memento of this experience of trying something new, getting outside of my comfort zone, learning and growing, and of the philosophical shift, I guess, that kind of accompanies that, embracing what you have and making the best of it. I kind of like that. Even if I never play with this deck again, I think that's worth it. I think that's kind of nice. But it would be nice to play some more, online or in person. I think I might. Anyway, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed my little adventure. Maybe it inspired you, either to embrace the life that you have and the deck you've been given, or maybe to actually try the game of Keyforge, which is quite cool and is in stores now. But whatever it is that you got from this little story, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it has value to you. Okay, until next time, my little rain clouds.